I'm just calling to let you know we've refined the guest list for the winter solstice gala, my mother Patricia said. Her voice was breezy, light, the way someone talks about rescheduling a hair appointment, not cutting their own daughter out of the family's most prestigious event of the year. We've had to make some cuts, Leilani. It's strictly high society this year. Potential investors for Asher's new venture. We need people who fit the aesthetic. People who can hold a room. She paused, but didn't wait for me to speak. And you know how you get in those crowds. You're quiet. You just be bored sitting in the corner. It's for the best. 3 weeks before Christmas. The rejection wasn't even disguised. It was clinical. Of course, I said. And then I hung up. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your part of the world. I love seeing how global our community is. I sat in the silence of my apartment. It was a high-rise in Chicago, 50 floors up, overlooking a frozen lake, Michigan. The interior was austere, glass, steel, white leather. My mother called it cold, called it clear. I stared at my phone, the screen black, reflecting my own face back at me. I wasn't surprised. That was the worst part. I wasn't shocked or heartbroken. I was just tired. This was the architecture of my life. I was the glitch in their perfect matrix. My sister Alyssa was the trophy. The PR executive with the perfect blowout, the perfect husband, the perfect laugh that sounded like champagne bubbles. I was the tech support. The one they called when the Wi-Fi went down or when they needed someone to watch the house while they summered in the Hamptons. Growing up, the cruelty was never loud. It was a slow drip. A comment about my frizzy hair before a family portrait. A sigh when I talked about coding instead of boys. My father, Stephen, would pat my head and say, "At least you're smart, Leilani. You'll always have that." As if intelligence was a consolation prize for being unlovable. They didn't know what I did. Not really. To them, I worked in computers. Fixed things. I was useful, but I wasn't impressive. They didn't know I had founded a cybersecurity firm 5 years ago. They didn't know I had just closed a contract with the Department of Defense. They didn't know my net worth was sitting comfortably at $68 million, or that my company was valued at $175 million. They didn't know because they never asked. Not once. For years I accepted it. I fell into the trap of normalized cruelty. You start to believe that if you just stay quiet enough, if you make yourself small enough, maybe they won't notice your flaws. Maybe they'll let you stay. It's a survival mechanism. You convince yourself that silence is safety. You convince yourself that being the easy child is a virtue, when really, it's just a way to avoid being the target. I paid for dinners I wasn't invited to enjoy. I bought gifts for parties I wasn't asked to attend. I became a ghost in my own family, haunting the edges of their lives, hoping for scraps of affection that never came. But tonight, staring at the lights of the city below, something shifted. The silence in my apartment didn't feel like safety anymore. Felt like a tomb. And I was done being buried alive. Christmas Eve arrived with a biting wind that rattled the windows. I ordered sushi from the most expensive place in the city, a $300 omakase box that tasted like ash in my mouth. I sat at my kitchen island alone and opened Instagram. It was a mistake. But it's the mistake we all make, isn't it? We go looking for the hurt. And there it was. Alyssa had posted a photo 10 minutes ago. It was taken in my parents' penthouse. The tree was 12 feet tall, dripping in gold and crystal ornaments. My parents were there, raising glasses of vintage champagne. Alyssa and Asher were center frame, looking like royalty. And next to Asher, in the seat that should have been mine, was a man I didn't recognize. He was older, wealthy-looking, laughing at something Asher had said. The caption read, "Family is the ultimate luxury. So blessed to spend the holidays with the people who matter most. #legacy #winter solstice." I zoomed in on the empty space where I should have been standing. It wasn't empty. It was filled by a stranger. Potential investor. They had replaced me with utility. They had traded their daughter for a business opportunity. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't that they didn't have room for me. It was that I didn't have value to them. To them I was a liability. Smudge on the lens. This stranger, this wallet with a pulse, he fit the aesthetic. I didn't. I looked around my apartment. It was beautiful. It was expensive. And it was completely, devastatingly empty. But as I looked at that photo, at their frozen, curated smiles, I realized something else. Their togetherness was hollow. They were crowded, but they weren't connected. They were performing happiness for an audience of strangers. I was alone, yes. But my solitude was real. My success was real. My power was real. I had spent my life trying to buy a ticket to a show I didn't even want to watch. I didn't need a seat at their table. I needed to build my own table. And I knew exactly where to start. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed. August. He was an aerospace tycoon, a man worth nearly $10 billion, a recluse who hated the spotlight as much as I did. We had met when I consulted on a massive data breach for his company. We had spent hours debating encryption protocols and quantum computing. He respected my mind. He didn't care about my aesthetic. He had sent me a standing invitation months ago. If you ever want to escape the noise, the yacht is in St. Bart's for New Year's. Just you, me, and the ocean. Hit call. He answered on the second ring. Leilani. His voice was deep, warm. Merry Christmas. Is the offer still open? Yes. My voice didn't shake. Always, he said. When can you get here? Tomorrow, I said. I'm leaving everything behind. Good, he said. I'll send the jet. Packed one bag. No dresses that I bought to impress my mother. No sensible shoes for running errands for my sister. Just bikinis, silk caftans, and my laptop. I walked out of my apartment and locked the door. I didn't leave a note. I didn't send a text. I just left. The jet was waiting at a private airfield. White leather seats, champagne on ice, a flight attendant who knew my name. We landed in St. Bart's just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in violent streaks of purple and gold. August was waiting on the dock. He looked different than I remembered. More relaxed, tan, wearing linen pants and a loose shirt. He smiled when he saw me, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Welcome aboard, architect, he said, using the nickname he'd given me. The yacht was a floating palace. 300 feet of sleek design. A crew that anticipated needs before I even knew I had them. But it wasn't the luxury that struck me. It was the warmth. August introduced me to his other guests. A Nobel Prize-winning physicist, a famous sculptor, a tech CEO I had admired for years. They didn't look through me. They looked at me. They asked me what I thought about the future of AI. They listened when I spoke. We sat on the deck until 3 a.m, drinking wine that cost more than my parents' car, talking about ideas, about the world, about things that actually mattered. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the boring one. I wasn't the quiet one. I was the fascinating one. I realized then that I had never been boring. I had just been in the wrong room. I had been trying to explain quantum mechanics to people who only cared about reality TV. I didn't need to change myself. I needed to change my audience. I shed my invisibility like a heavy coat. I laughed, debated, took up space. New Year's Day broke bright and clear. We were having breakfast on the upper deck, mimosas and tropical fruit. August and I were deep in a debate about the ethics of space colonization. I was gesturing with a piece of toast, laughing at something he said. A tech influencer who was on board snapped a photo. That's the shot, she said. The Titan and the architect. You guys look like you own the future. She posted it. She tagged August. He tagged me. And then the world tilted. My phone, which had been silent for days, suddenly lit up. It started with a buzz, then a vibration, then a relentless, frantic dancing across the table. Notifications flooded the screen. Pulse, text, him. Picked it up. 53 missed calls from my mother. 27 from Alyssa. 12 from Asher. I opened the texts. Alyssa. Where are you? Is that August Vance? Why are you with August Vance? Mom. Leilani, pick up the phone. Mrs. Halloway just sent me a picture. Are you in St. Bart's? Why didn't you tell us? Asher. Leilani, call me back immediately. This is important. Do you know who that guy is? We've been trying to get a meeting with his firm for 6 months. Call me. The messages shifted instantly from silence to panic. And greed. They didn't care if I was okay. They cared that I was next to power. Asher had recognized his white whale. The investor he had been desperate to land was sitting across from me, eating melon and listening to my thoughts on dark matter. Everything okay? August asked, watching me. Better than okay, I said. They see me. Do you want to answer? Not yet, I said. Let them wait. I ghosted them. For 3 days, I let their calls go to voicemail. I let their texts pile up. Posted more photos. Me diving off the yacht. Me at a private dinner with a physicist. Me in August looking at the stars. I curated a narrative of absolute, untouchable power. Finally, I texted my mother back. I'm fine. Traveling for work. I'll be back in Chicago next week. The response was immediate. We need to see you. Dinner. Saturday. Bring your friend. I'll ask him, I typed. I looked at August. They want to have dinner. They want to meet you. Of course they do, he said. His eyes gleaming with a cold intelligence. Are we going? Yes, I said. But we're not going for reconciliation. We're going for judgment. We flew back to Chicago on his jet. The city was frozen, gray and biting, a stark contrast to the golden light of St. Bart's. We drove to the restaurant in a black SUV. It was the kind of place my parents loved. Stiff white tablecloths, waiters in tuxedos, a hush that felt like a library. My family was already there. They stood up when we walked in. The transformation was nauseating. My mother rushed forward to hug me, something she hadn't done in years. Alyssa kissed my cheek, her eyes darting to August. Asher was practically vibrating, smoothing his tie, looking at August like he was a pile of gold bars. Leilani, you look different, my mother said, eyeing my tan, my silk blouse, the diamond studs August had given me as a thank you for the trip. I feel different, I said. And you must be August, Asher said, extending a hand that was slightly sweaty. It is an honor, sir. Truly. I've followed your career for years. Charmed, August said. He didn't smile. He shook Asher's hand briefly, then pulled out my chair for me. We sat down. The dynamic was immediate. They fawned over August. They asked him about his rockets, his investments, his vision. They laughed too loud at his jokes. And then they turned to me. So Leilani, Alyssa said, a tight smile on her face. I guess you're doing work for August. That's lucky. He must be very patient to tolerate all your tech talk. She handles my cybersecurity, August said smoothly. Among other things. Right, Asher said, dismissing me. Listen, August, while we have you here, I'd love to run something by you. I have a real estate portfolio that is poised for massive growth. High-end luxury developments. We're looking for a strategic partner. Someone with vision. He launched into his pitch. It was slick, rehearsed, and desperate. I watched him, sipping my water. I knew this pitch. I knew the numbers behind it. I knew it was a house of cards built on leverage and hope. When Asher finished, he leaned back, looking triumphant. So, what do you think? Is this something Vance Industries would be interested in? August looked at him. Then he looked at me. And then he laughed. It was a dry, dangerous sound that sucked the air out of the room. Asher, August said. I think there's a misunderstanding here. Leilani doesn't just handle my IT. She is my strategic partner. The table went silent. I don't make a single investment without her approval, August continued. In fact, my team brought your portfolio to me 3 months ago. It was on my desk. I was considering it. Asher's eyes went wide. You were? Yes, August said. But then I asked my most trusted advisor to run a risk assessment on it. She told me it was over-leveraged, poorly managed, and a high-risk liability. She advised me to kill the deal. So I did. Asher paled. He looked at me. You killed my deal. I saved him from a bad investment, I said calmly. That's my job. But you're just... Alyssa stammered. You just fix computers. I build digital fortresses, I said. I own a firm valued at $175 million. My personal net worth is $68 million. I don't fix computers, Alyssa. I own the network. My mother dropped her fork. It clattered loudly against the china. You have $68 million, she whispered. Yes, I said. And I made every cent of it while you were busy worrying about whether I fit the aesthetic of your party. We didn't know, my father said, his voice shaking. You never asked, I said. But we're family, Asher said, desperation creeping into his voice. Leilani, you can fix this. You can tell him to reconsider. We can work together. Keep it in the family. Family? Yes. You mean the family that uninvited me to Christmas because I was embarrassing? The family that replaced me with a client at their table. You don't want a partner, Asher. You want a bailout. And I don't do bailouts. I stood up. August stood with me. I think we're done here, I said. Enjoy your dinner. It's on me. Consider it a tax write-off. We walked out. We didn't look back. The aftermath was quiet. There were no screaming matches. No dramatic scenes. Just silence. I blocked their numbers. I sold my apartment in Chicago and moved my headquarters to the coast. August and I aren't just partners. We're building something new together. A legacy defined by what we create, not who we impress. Sometimes I think about them in that penthouse. It must be very cold this time of year. And very, very empty. Sometimes the people who are supposed to be your roots are actually just anchors. Have you ever had to cut the rope to save yourself? Tell me your story in the comments. And if you enjoyed this, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding your true worth.